Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of a Man once again, and today we are doing another book review. Now today we are going to be reviewing The Mischievous Merchant, which is book 2 in the A Bard's Tale series. So there you go. It's written by J. Paul and it's published by Moonquill, as you guys can see right there. Now the genres here are lit RPG, fantasy, and comedy, and I have already reviewed volume 1, which is up there in the card if you want to see. I did review it a couple months ago, so maybe the reviewing style is a little bit choppier than this one, but, you know, my thoughts on the book still hold true. So there you go. Before we actually get into this, I do want to mention a few things. One, this is twice the length of the previous volume, so it is a little bit jarring, and I did find it a little bit, weird that the first book was a very short, very easy read, and this one is a big honking chunker of a book. It's not really that big of an issue, but usually when you're reading series, the books get longer progressively instead of immediately, like in the case with this one. And the other thing is that they changed the material of the cover. It was this really nice kind of matte, waxy feeling cover on the first one, which is basically it didn't have this glossy film on top of it. And as far as I'm aware, it's the same material, just with a different coating on it. And I don't really like the change. One, because it makes it incongruent across the editions. And two, because I really thought that that very nice, waxy feeling paper, matte cover actually fit the kind of magical fantasy world style that the book content actually kind of fit in. It's kind of like fantasy books getting leather covers feels really cool because, oh my god, it's a fantasy book, and books in medieval settings were usually made with leather and, very thick paper. So it's cool like that, and I thought that that was a nice kind of alternative to leather feeling materials. So I really don't like this glossy, kind of really boring, normal style. The other thing I do want to notice is that there's a bit of a printing error right there, as you guys can see. Here, this is probably clear. Can you guys see that? The image overlaps onto the spine quite a bit, and it makes the text there not be centered, which is really annoying. And again, this is another thing that makes the incongruencies between the first volume and the second volume really noticeable, and it actually harms how it looks on the shelf, which is, maybe you could argue, as important, if not more important, than the reading experience, because, you read it once, you put it on the shelf, and then you might not touch it again for a couple months, or a year, or, maybe never again, and you just want to have it on display. And having these types of problems is just not great. I don't want to blame Moonquill, though. I don't actually know if it was their fault, but, I mean, they definitely chose to change the material of the cover. I think it was based on user input, or people telling them that, hey, the cover material isn't that great, which is fine, but personally, I would have preferred that they maintained the other cover, just at least for the sake of synergy between book to book, right? So that's my 2 cents on that. Now, the premise here is that on the road to Eldar's port, which is the big city, Perry meets with a kobold, which is named Viz. And a kobold is kind of like a small, lizard-based goblin, essentially, kind of like that. And they join forces, and using Perry's magical skills, they sell Viz's wares, which are these basically magic engineered things, because he's an artificer. And then they incur the wrath of the Merchants Guild, the Traders Guild, and some other guild in this big city, and they have a chokehold on the business and economy of this town. And they don't like that Perry and Viz walk in and just kind of take over and do things without their permission. So they incur the wrath of those guilds and then get recruited by another guild, which is the Thieves Guild, to do an infiltration job into those other guilds so that they can figure out why the heck they have such a chokehold on this city. So it's very interesting. It's cool. It's kind of like Medieval Mission Impossible, but if Ethan Hunt was also really lazy, just kind of easygoing Hobbit man. And it's very fun. I do really enjoy it. It's very well written. The prose is nice. It's not terribly complex, but it's not so like easy to read that you feel like you're reading a middle grade book. It's just a very nice, very balanced prose, and I quite like that. I love when fantasy stories are written in the type of prose that's very middle of the road, kind of like Brandon Sanderson, because it's like I am already, submitting myself to reading 200 pages of exposition. The least you could do is make it easy to understand. And so I actually don't really like very flowery prose very often, because it's just like an extra step that doesn't need to be there for me to enjoy the story. Although, I mean, I do have the ability to understand it and like the vocabulary and stuff. I just don't particularly enjoy it. So I'm really happy with the prose in this book. I think it's really good. So let's just jump into the proper review of the book. And the plotline here is good. It's very enjoyable. It's very easy to read, like I said. And it's just very nicely developed. I like how everything moves from one thing to the next. Although I do want to notice that there was one plot point that I think was carried over from the first book that was not explored at all. And I think it was brought in from the first book because I actually went back and tried to check if I could find the person that they mentioned, which is Samantha Winters. And I could not find it. The only big important female character that wasn't Lily, which is the elf girl that kind of like went catatonic in the first volume, was Lady Hyacinth. Now, I don't remember any conversation between Lady Hyacinth and Perry that defined that he needed to go find this woman called Samantha Winters. And they also mentioned Walter in the same phrase. So I don't remember Walter having any conversation with Perry about finding Samantha Winters either. So that plot point was really weird because it was mentioned at the beginning and then it was mentioned at the end before they left the town. But there was never a moment in between, in the middle of the story, where the meat and potatoes of the story are, where it was mentioned. So I don't know if that was like an editing problem, like at one point, J. Paul wrote that plot point in and then changed up all the stuff in the middle, and then it just never got removed when it was mentioned or what. But overall, besides that one little issue, everything was really good. I just really enjoyed how Perry has to overcome the kind of debuffs that come with being a Jovian, which is a Hobbit equivalent. And the way that he uses his real skills, his ability to play music, his ability to tell very elaborate, very honest sounding lies, and his other abilities that he's developing throughout the book, which are merchant craft and this other skill called wayfaring, which is kind of like all the skills you need in order to go travel on your own without being an adventurer. And it's just very good. I really enjoy how it all kind of works. And I really enjoy the whole balance between the slice of life aspects of Perry cooking and having fun, creating recipes, versus the stuff that he has to do action-based, like infiltrating the guild and like saving people and stuff like that. It's just very, very nicely elaborated, and I really enjoy the execution of the storytelling in this book quite a lot. Now, the key plot points here are basically enter Eldarsport, which is the first thing that happens, and then go try to get a guild membership, get denied, sell your wares anyways, which then incurs the wrath of the guilds and leads to Perry being recruited by the Thieves Guild in order to do the infiltration job into the Merchants Guild, right? So that sounds kind of confusing, but it's actually a very linear plot. And then from there, it's like a big mission. You have Perry acting like he's a worker for this Hobgrim, which is kind of like some sort of dwarf equivalent, I think. And then we kind of get him like doing the whole Mission Impossible thing, where he's infiltrating into this organization, but then he's trying to figure out stuff about it. And then we have the whole thing where he like doubts if the thing is real or not, like the problem. And just very good stuff. And then they finish the mission, stuff happens, and they have to leave. And overall, it was really good. I really did enjoy it. Just that one issue with the Samantha Winters plotline was just not great. Because it was actually not very important, though. It's not like something that's going to make or break the book for you. It's just something I noticed and I did want to point out. Now, characters-wise, they're good. I really do enjoy Perry. Like, he's just really fun to read about. However, I do dislike the fact that he gets really distracted, at important action scenes about like he's in an action scene and he's trying to figure out something, but then in the middle of the like figuring out thing, he starts thinking about women, and it's like, bro, what? This is not the time to do that. And I don't understand why he does it, because there's a lot of times otherwise during the slice of life moments where he can have all of those thoughts about the female characters and how each of them relates to him and how he's interested in one of them but not the other one. All of that stuff he can definitely do, but he doesn't have to do it in the action section. And I just really dislike that he would do it in the action section. It just kind of like killed the action mood, I guess, a little bit. Like, it was just like not the right moment. Now, I think this was because it's kind of like a realistic thing to be like, okay, I have to do this, and then let your mind wander to do something else, which is kind of like procrastinating and stuff. But like, as a normal person, that's due to the fact that there's actually no real pressure to finish the things you have to finish. Perry is in a life or death situation. There is very immense pressure. Him like wasting brain power on figuring out which girl he wants to bang is not really a useful characteristic, right? And it's not very beneficial to him as a character, and to the readers in terms of endearing us to him. It's just kind of like there, and I just didn't like it. But overall, everything else about Perry is very good. I really like how ingenious he is and how he plays the game of this world very, very nicely. Besides him, though, I'm not really sure that any of the other characters are that important or that meaningful. Like, all the characters from the first volume are basically non-existent here, except for Hruk, and that's near the end of the story. So it's not really all that relevant, although I guess he does help Perry a little bit. So he is important, but otherwise, most of the other characters are just, like, there, because it would get really boring to just follow Perry by himself all the time. So those other characters that are introduced are Viz the Kobold, which is a kind of small humanoid lizard guy. He's kind of like a lizard goblin, essentially. And, yeah, he's interesting in the sense that he brings up a lot of interesting world-building aspects, like this new type of magic, which he teaches to Perry and helps him develop, like, new skills. And the fact that, you know, he's a different race of, like, small humanoid. That's cool, but it's not very important. And overall, Viz is just there to have someone to help Perry around, basically. And it's not really all that important. I guess he will be important in the later volumes, since he is going to travel with Perry for a while. But I'm not really sure. Now, the other characters we have are, well, basically there's two other important characters. Well, and I say important in quotation marks because they're not really, but, like, they're relevant. And that's Kitty, which is a very introverted kind of like assassin girl from the Thieves Guild. She's very interesting in the sense that, like, she's just really mean for no reason, and you don't really understand why. But then she kind of ends up being a bit of a romantic interest for Perry, but she's not really that, like, important. She doesn't really offer much, besides being like a visual connection to the Thieves Guild. Besides that, though, we do get two new characters that join Perry. One of them is Crispy Bacon, which is a little, like, pig man that has fire powers. So basically, like, Tepig or Emboar from Pokemon. I'll put a picture of them up on the screen so you guys can see. And I really like it. I really like his name, Crispy Bacon. It's just so funny. I really do enjoy it. And he basically, like, is Perry's son. And it's very funny. I do really enjoy that aspect. Obviously, Curry the Goat is a very important character, and we can kind of start to see Perry and Curry the Goat, like, connect and kind of find a way to communicate through the magic of the game, which is really cool. But yeah, overall, it's not really, like all the characters here are important, but, like, not that much comparatively. And then the one that is really important is Maka, who is the storytelling spider. And she was a recurring character in the first volume, and she becomes a recurring character here as well. And she's very cool, very important to the plotline, so I won't mention much about her. But I really do like her. It's a very interesting concept. And yeah, so world building wise, the world really shines here. The writer actually is very good at this. He has a lot of stuff here, and it's all kind of D&D based. So it's actually not that complex, but there's a nice kind of refreshing little bit of information to each kind of race and each kind of situation that is really nice. And I really do like how well implemented the game mechanics are and how nicely it all kind of works together. So I don't know, the way that everything is written and works and kind of synergizes together is very good. And I really do enjoy the exposition because it never feels like exposition. It just feels like Perry's walking around and he's learning stuff about this new place that he's in, which is wonderful. It's kind of like the difference between reading a textbook before you visit a country versus just walking around the country and figuring it out as you go. So there you go. That's kind of like the best comparison I can come up with. But yeah, it's just really nicely done, and I really do enjoy how everything kind of develops. The development of Maka as a character is really nice. The development of Perry's powers are really nice as well, because there's so much time you spend looking at his character chart and how he's growing and developing as a character through his character sheet, and it's very well done. And the whole kind of like background of all of the gods and stuff is very nice when we do get to it. So world building wise, it's very, very fun. And that's it. There's no art, which I actually think is a negative. I think that this is a pure lit RPG story. This is not a light novel. However, it would have been nice if you considered it a light novel and added some art. You know, Moonquill, this is a very nice, very good kind of like story that could use some very nice art to bring it to life and kind of bring a little bit more extra kind of sauce to it, a little bit more like interest to it. And it would have been really nice because there's way too many pages that like the chapter ends and then there's just a blank page between the end of one chapter and the start of another. And those could have been filled in with either updated character sheets for Perry at the end of each chapter, or with nice, very visual images of what Perry has been dealing with during the chapter. At least it would have been nice to have kind of images or character sheets for the types of creatures that he's dealing with. So one for the Brork and one for the Nil Goat and stuff like that. Like, it would have been really nice to just have some of those. For reference, like, it would have been nice to have images like the ones we see in Spider So What, which are like these nice character sheets for all the monsters. So yeah, now fanservice wise, there's a bit of fanservice. Obviously, Perry is very interested in women, and he does take his time to kind of ogle some of them sometimes. And there is a bit of a sex scene, I guess, here, but it's mostly fade to black, so it's not anything very serious. However, the way that, you know, Perry goes about thinking about women is definitely more on the adult side than like on a teenager side. So maybe this is an adult title, but I think that this is very clearly viable in a PG-13 kind of setting. So there you go. Now, rating wise, this is a 4 out of 5. It's very solid, but of course, there's nothing particularly amazing here that really like blows my mind. This is just a very solidly written book. And besides that one little issue with the Samantha Winters plotline, very nicely done. I really did enjoy it. Do I recommend this title? Yes, I definitely recommend it. It's very fun and it's very enjoyable. And similar titles to this, basically any lit RPG light novel that you can think of, or any light novel that has game elements, is going to be similar. However, for the more kind of like slice of life with some action aspects, I think Shield Hero is probably the best comparison, because both of them deal with like a character that has been slighted, you know, initially, and then kind of like has to work through, and a lot of the working through is a lot of grinding and kind of just like living life on this medieval setting kind of world. However, now Fumi in Shield Hero is much more angry, and the way that he develops is a little bit different and much more like dark, whereas Perry is very light and jovial and kind of easygoing because, you know, he's a hobbit and that's what hobbits are. So yeah, Shield Hero is probably the best one in terms of like comparison, but you know, any light novel with game elements should be a good read if you did enjoy this. So there you go. That's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, thank you so much for watching. See you guys later.